I have some thoughts in regards to this. Basically, here I'll share my here's our video today, our webinar today, and so we have a post in the community Q&A. It's kind of ongoing right now. And that post is one that I posted, just asking for suggestions for like a workshop answering common questions or questions that you have. So let's see if I can find it here. There it is. I wish I could pin this, but it doesn't look like you can pin a comment on the community page here. But basically, you can, if you ever want to add or comment on this, it's basically asking for your questions answered in a workshop. And one of the questions was in regards to a slideshow. And because I've never covered it, I kind of wanted to tackle it in a full length workshop. And then some of the other questions were better suited to maybe like partial parts of a workshop. So anyway, long story short, if you have any questions or suggestions for workshop content, asking a question, I would fire it in this Q&A panel here. It's something that I'm going to be working on and creating more of a sort of maybe like a medium term project here. So not a short term project and certainly not a long term project. So if you have any suggestions, just fire them in there. But yeah, that's what this was today. I just figured that rather than do a full workshop with a bunch of different sections, one of which was slideshows, slideshows probably deserves its own workshop and it can be a bit longer in content. So that was the impetus for today. Let me change the color on that. Oh, so much better. Okay. Yeah, we'll close this here and we'll get to starting here in a moment. Okay, and then everyone can see that. Good. Joe, welcome. Gord, welcome. Ab, welcome. Fawa, welcome. Michelle, welcome. Deal, welcome. Paul, welcome. John. Be good. You asked for it. Awesome. Thanks for asking. That was a good suggestion. Okay, so basically, we're going to be tackling this in two ways today. There's two ways to make slides, and the main question revolves around captioning your images. So, slideshows does enable you to do that. And slideshows in ACDSee is kind of its own tool, which we'll get into today. However, slideshows are a certain type of file, and that file is an exe file. For Windows users, you'll probably be very familiar with it. It's an executable file, and it's one that you can run on your Windows operating system. Now, if you don't have a Windows operating system, this file won't run. So we're going to look at maybe a second suggestion for those of you that that aren't using Windows. So we'll look at that. Or creating a slideshow file that would work if you were running it off of a non-Windows operating system, like maybe like a TV or like a tablet or something like that. But there is a way for us to create a functional slideshow file in ACDSee using the slideshow tool, and that is an exe file that we can run on any computer. So if you were using your computer to showcase others, or simply just sending your executable file to family members abroad, being like, "Hey, this was our trip to X," check it out. Here's the file. That would be something that you can do. B mentioned great because I want to be able to copy the slideshow to USB, etc., and show on the TV. Yeah, so we'll showcase that method too. Basically, the exe file that the slideshow creates wouldn't suffice. That wouldn't work for what you're doing. And there's other things that the slideshow tool can create, but in actuality, they're not useful for what you're doing. So we'll talk about it all. Okay, so we got some good participants now. I'm just going to make sure that my chat and my Q&A is open. If you have any questions while the workshop is going on, just fire them in the Q&A panel. They're easier to sort and easier to remove once I've answered them. So that would be really helpful to me if you do that. And if there's any question that I can't answer, I typically try to answer them at the end of the workshop. So I might leave some until the end of the workshop. Okay. What else is there to say at the top of the workshop? Nothing, just that I will be scheduling a new workshop for probably next month actually now, And importantly, our YouTube now contains all of our past workshops. There was a month or two there where we were having an issue with YouTube. So we have resolved that issue, and you can find all of our workshops and, in fact, a bunch of new tutorials that I've been creating as well on our YouTube page. For those of you who are unaware, our YouTube page is ACDSee Photo Studio, and you can get to our new videos by just clicking on videos, or you can go to our playlist, and we have an entirely massive playlist of workshop videos, 124 videos in total, which is with the average runtime of about an hour to hour and 15 minutes. That's a like at least over 124 hours of of workshop content that myself and Rodrigo have put together, in addition to some videos by Alec Watson. So check it out there. Okay, let's begin today. So as I mentioned at the top of the workshop, there's two methods of approaching workshops, and we'll be talking about both. I think let's talk about the first method, and the first method is creating a slideshow file. So in actuality, there's sort of a couple different things you can do. Just to clarify, I just made a quick folder that contains some images. Let's just say for example purposes that these are travel photos. I just got some nice photos of Portugal, one from several different cities. So there's 4 photos from Lisbon, there's 4 photos from Porto, and 3 photos from Braga. These are different cities in Portugal. So if you were traveling or providing some sort of photography using a slideshow, this might be a common thing that you'd be talking about is you'd be using photos from some sort of traveling or some sort of trip. So right at the top of the workshop, we're going to be talking about creating a slideshow file. We're going to just talk about displaying a slideshow in general. And then we're going to talk about creating an action that contains a caption that we're going to then place on our photos. And then from there, what we can do is just we can keep those in a folder, and then you can utilize them to display on some sort of device, like B. Deal had mentioned with their use of a TV, because it's very common that TVs will display photos. So that would be something that you could filter through, using your TV. Okay, so here I have a bunch of images. If I navigate to slideshow on its own, what it's going to do is it's going to open up just a slideshow right away. And this uses settings that we can configure. But basically, as you can see, it's just going to run through. It has like a slight effect to it, and then it's zooming. Hopefully all of you can see this okay. And after a certain degree of seconds, it then transitions to the next photo in the slideshow. And ultimately, it will repeat this process. So if I go to the end of the slideshow here, let's go further along in our listing. It will get to the end shortly here, and what it will do is it will restart the slideshow. Yeah, let's see. There it is, number 11, and then it will go to the original photo. Beautiful. So on base value, you can take these images and present a slideshow just by using that tool. Now, this obviously is instantaneous and is sort of presented to you right away. So in all but like a more intimate setting where you'd be showing someone on your computer itself, this function is not necessarily useful to send to someone else. But I will draw your attention to the configure slideshow options here, because a lot what we're going to be talking about when we're creating a slideshow will be configuring based on these settings. Excuse me. So one of the things you'll notice is that when you open up this configure box, it'll open up a slideshow properties listing, and it has a bunch of content here. So we'll just break this down and talk about each. On the base value, file selection just indicates to the configure properties window which files you want to use to present to your slideshow. And in this content, basically, I've basically gone with selected media. I could have also gone with all media and current folder, or all media and a current folder and subfolders. So it could have shown to me the media that I've selected, the media that's just in the folder in general, and then the folder and any subfolders that existed beneath it. So that's how we would sort of establish which photos we're using to basically move forward with our slideshow. This is actually really useful, especially when it comes to all media and current folders and subfolders, because you might have a that's right. You might actually have something like a trip that you've placed into one folder. This is my trip to Portugal, for example. And then in a subfolder, I was actually there for a wedding. So there's wedding photos to do with it. So that makes total sense to include something like that predicated on the second option here. Let's go to basic here. Basic options just indicate to us the duration of the slide and what slide effect there may be. So as you can see here, there's a variety of transitions. You could not use any transition at all to just do a sort of a general transition, or you can apply one of these transition types. Anyone who's used a sort of a Windows slideshow will be familiar with these. These are sort of the standard methods. I would suggest maybe a fade is probably the most appropriate. Some of these are quite intense. Let's see if, yeah, for example, Pixelate gives you that option right there. That's pretty gaudy and old fashioned, but just a classic fade is probably appropriate for slideshows. The background color controls the color that the background is displayed. If there are any like duration between slides, basically. And then we have a slide duration, which it looks like most slides are set at 9, which is actually quite long, I would say. But you can change this, especially if you're planning to talk over the slideshows or if you want some sort of content slide duration for that. But the other thing is slideshow files can be prompted to change to the next slide regardless of the duration. So this is something that maybe if you're talking over your slides, you want this something to be a bit longer. And then we have effects that you can actually apply overlaid over top of the image. So black and white would apply a black and white effect to the images. Sepia would, or vivid rather, would probably increase the saturation in your image. Sepia would do a sepia tone over top of it. Typically, none of you will probably use any of these effects just because you already like the photos you're working with. But if you have an effect you'd want to apply, that would be where you'd apply it here. Let's move on to advanced. Advanced is a little bit contains some useful functions. In this case, you would be able to loop your slideshow, which you would probably want. And on the base value, you'd probably want to hide the control bar if the mouse isn't moving. So if the mouse starts to move, the control bar will pop up, but you'd want to auto hide it generally. That means that you won't have this little control bar that will appear at the bottom section of the slide. And as a result of that, hide a little bit of the image itself. You can also play audio. So if I wanted to add, so if I click play embedded audio, it's going to give me the ability to browse to a certain audio file. And that audio file will play in the background while I present my slideshow. And this audio can then be browsed. Basically, I can find the corresponding audio file in here. Audio file in this case will probably be a WAV or an MP3 file. So those would be the ones that you're going to be looking for. And then you can also stretch images to fit the screen. I wouldn't recommend doing this. I think typically you'd probably want to present images in such a way that it goes with their natural sort of height and or width. The one consideration is if you have a bunch of vertically oriented images, you might want to consider stretching the images to fit in that case, but that would hide the bottom and top portion of your image. So things to consider in regards to here. Well, the other thing is you can go from a linear order to a shuffled order. And in that case, basically, it would shuffle the images for you, present them linearly. Pardon me. If you have any questions, fire them in the Q&A. Michelle asked, can you use multiple effects in one slide? That's actually a really good question. I don't know if you can use, well, it does allow you to check multiple options. So let's see what the preview displays. And maybe one pixelate for Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure the order in which those would be presented, those transitions would be presented to you, but it does appear as though it will sort of randomize or choose those options based on some sort of order. But yes, it looks like you can apply multiple transitions at the same time by just clicking these boxes. So just something to keep in mind if you wanted a sort of a very interactive slideshow. Great question. Okay, so and then the probably the portion and the section that's of most interest to us here is the final, which is the text. And um oh, sorry, B asked, do you have to have your own music on an MP3 file for that? ACDC does not have any of these. Yeah, so you're not gonna there's no default file that we would suggest. You would use your own MP3 files for this. Yeah, so if you have some sort of song that you either purchased off of Apple Music, or you have your own composition that you've created, or you have a even an audio track that you've recorded that goes along with the slides themselves, that might be useful to use. And then in terms of there's many ways to download music on online, so that would be an option to you as well. But yeah, basically, no, ACDC doesn't provide a default like it does with certain visual tools. Like, for example, actions. We create a bunch of actions, or for example, we create a lot of different sort of default functions for certain tools in ACDC. This is not one of those cases. This is one where you'd have to fill in the blanks yourself. Dave asked, I'd be interested to know if we can apply this slideshow to sending photos to a digital magazine. Would it be the same or need copyright protections before sending? Interesting question. I'm going to completely stay away from the copyright in general, as I don't, because copyright is not something that ACDC is going to be engaging with. We assume that you have full copyright control over any images you're working with. Second question would be also keep in mind that copyright changes depending on the country that you're working with. So if you're sending images to a magazine that's in a foreign country, they might have different copyright laws. So just in general, I'm going to stay away from the copyright. I'm not going to provide you any advice in regards to copyright. Okay. Second thing is, you can, yeah, it would be something that in the creation of a slideshow file, you would be telling them like, hey, I'm providing you an exe file that is a slideshow file. However, keep in mind if you're providing an exe file to a foreign body, a third party, that sort of thing, typically sending an exe file is something that most email providers would be very wary of. And the reason why is if I'm sending this to my aunt for her to view my vacation, she'll probably feel comfortable opening up an exe file. But keep in mind, like, exe files are also executable files for Windows, and they're typically like how people distribute and send bugs and stuff like that to other viruses, that sort of thing. So I would say that this is more intended to be used, a tool to be intended to send among family, that sort of thing, rather than a tool to be used in a professional capacity. Um, Furthermore, I'm not sure of many magazines that would want to receive your portfolio in such an animated form. I think typically they would probably want you to present them a portfolio of images that are on a website, or they might have a method that they themselves facilitate, in the sense that they might have an upload system on their magazine or that sort of thing. It'd be pretty unusual for a magazine to have a preference to receive a slideshow file, on top of the other concerns that I've said in regards to both copyright as well as just the sending of an exe file is going to really raise red flags to a company like a periodical or magazine. Does that make sense, Dave? This is a good question. Again, the use case for this was entirely sort of designed for family and friends rather than it be designed for a professional capacity in that way. A professional capacity would be like a website or utilizing some sort of your own website or utilizing some sort of upload schematic that the magazine or periodical had. Anyway, let me know if that answers your question. It's a really good question. But yeah, that's that on that. Okay, let's get back to what we were talking about here. Those are good questions. Just a reminder to hit them in the Q&A if you can. That makes them easier to answer. So text is probably a really important aspect of this. So text in this case is going to be displayed in your image. And um, and what I mean by text is that we can apply the text ourselves here. We can suggest that my let's see here. Let's say my uh, um, vacation in Portugal. Okay, so if I said that, right? And if I just click OK, this will be presented to us at the bottom of our image. Let's see. Oh, it actually is presented at the top, but it's tiny here. And the problem here as well is that it is not photo specific. So it is the same text for all the images. So what we want to have is we want to have case specific uh, uh, text based on an image, based on each unique image in our slideshow here. So I'm going to go back to the configure slideshow section. So just back to slideshow, configure slideshow, and we'll go over to text here again. And we're going to actually talk about something different, which is I would remove this text. In this case, this would be good if I wanted a universal caption for all of my images. But in the case that I want a image specific caption, what I might want to consider doing here is inserting a metadata tag. And a metadata tag is something that we can fill out for each of these images separately. We're actually going to talk about this extensively when we talk about creating text over top of our images and using the actions tool here. But basically, what I would do is what we're going to do is we're going to add a metadata field that informs what these images, how these images are presented, and what is said on each image. So if I go to ACDSee metadata here, I'm going to click on this. And again, how I got to this screen was I'm still in this display header text section here. And actually, maybe what I want is I don't want header text, I want footer text. I want it to display at the bottom, not the top. But I'm still going to maintain this box here, and I'm going to click on Insert Metadata Tag. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on ACDSee metadata. ACDSee metadata is a proprietary metadata that I create on my images, which is maybe distinct from the IPTC information. But basically, it just gives me the ability to go to my ACDSee metadata field, which is on the right-hand side over here, and just fill out this information per image. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a caption. Okay. So I have ACDSee metadata opened, and I'm going to click on caption. I'm going to put a little check mark there, and I'm click OK. And then what it does is it fills out this little field, and it says ACDSee metadata caption. Okay. And with that, I'm going to click OK because I need to create that caption. Right now, I don't have a caption in the ACDSee caption field, so when I flicker through these slideshow files, nothing is presented to me yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a caption on every single one of these images. So if I take my image here and I select it, and I navigate to the Properties menu, specifically the Metadata tab within the Properties menu here, and I click on ACDSee metadata, there's this field here that's titled caption. And this is the field that we're going to be engaging with and is what's going to be displayed on the image when we fill it out. So, for example, let's go Lisbon, let's keep it simple. Let's go Lisbon, and then I'm just going to call it Lisbon 1 because it's a first photo. And then I go to my next image here. Oops, I need to apply that. I didn't apply it. Lisbon 1, there we go. Apply, there we are. I'm going to just do this on all my images. And as you can see here, this little pending metadata box pops up. This just indicates to me that now I have metadata associated with this image, and I can embed this if I want. So that's my fourth. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to add Porto. Let's say Porto 1 here, Porto 2. And I'm just going to apply as I go, adding these captions. And this is going to save me a bunch of time in a moment, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to add these. This is in Braga. Add one, Braga 2, Braga 3. Okay, so now if I click on all these images and just visualize the slideshow, right? Lisbon, in very small text, is listed at the bottom of each image. So if I go to Lisbon 2 here, um, and Lisbon 3, Lisbon 4, Lisbon 5, Porto 1, Porto 2, Porto 3, Porto 4, etc. So it's all listed at the bottom. Now, what I would want to consider is to go down to Slideshow and configure maybe larger text than what we're seeing there, because that's quite small, right? So probably what I want to do is I want to go to font, and let's make this font quite a bit bigger. So we'll make the color black first and foremost, say. Hopefully that is easy to see. We'll increase the font size, let's say, I don't know, 28, and we'll bold it, and then we'll make it like a reasonable font. Actually use one of these custom fonts that I added. They're kind of fun. We use this black letter font for fun. I'll click OK. And then with that complete, I'll click OK, but let's not add a background color. We'll click OK. And now when I visualize these, you can see that my text is displayed with the properties that I've provided. So it says Lisbon 1 there, Lisbon 2 in a black letter, Lisbon 3. Perhaps keeping a background color would be a best move. Because some of these images have varying backgrounds. So let's just change the background to, I don't know, white and visualize this again, and that's easier to see. So, B Deal asked, so I've already added captions to my vacation photos in metadata, so this saves me a step, right? Yeah, so you would just need to choose which metadata field you wanted to have added. So, and by that I mean when I go to configure slideshow and I go to text, and I go to insert metadata, I would want to pick the corresponding metadata field that is of value to me. So in this case, I went with the caption field, but perhaps keywords or notes would be better for you depending on what you're interacting with. Alternatively, too, if your metadata is listed into IPTC, so like under title or something like that, you can also do that by going to configure slideshow text, insert metadata. Instead of ACDSee metadata, I would go to IPTC, and then it's under content, and I believe it's title I would add. So depending on what metadata field you've added, you can display that information. Okay, next question. Since you're actually reusing the file names, you could have added that metadata instead of caption and saved a step. Yeah, so if we're just using the file names in this case, which isn't necessarily what you would do when you go to caption your images, but for example, I could have just went with that metadata instead, the actual title of the image, rather than, in this case, the caption that I'm using. But for the purpose of illustrating this, I really want to highlight the fact that I can choose which metadata field that I'm applying, right? Okay, so that's just displaying a slideshow on your computer. However, we also have the ability to create a slideshow file, which is exactly the same as what I just showed you. So if I go to create a slideshow under create, the slideshow file opens up this wizard, and the wizard enables us to go through these steps that create this file for me. For example, as I stated, there really is only, I think to me, there's only really one option here, and it's the standalone slideshow, and I'll explain why. The Windows screensaver saves a Windows screensaver. So this is something that you could use to display a screensaver on Windows if you wanted to. However, this isn't really something that you'd want to save or send to others because it's intended for display purposes on your home screen. The second one is an Adobe Flash Player slideshow, and I will just state that Adobe Flash Player is quite an outdated mode at this point. It is not something that you're going to see much, especially for video editing content, that sort of thing. Flash is typically it's sort of a dead file type. So I don't think there'd be any reason for you to have an Adobe Flash Player slideshow file. In many cases, if you were to send this, certain modern computers might not even have the ability to play it without downloading some sort of functionality that will allow you to play it. So, point being, the standalone slideshow in an exe file format, provided that your user or receiver has a Windows software, is probably the method you'd want to use. So if I click next, this gives me the ability to choose the photos that I would be working with. And as you can see here, it just contains the images that I've selected. If I go next, gives me the ability to set the transitions and the transition type. So earlier, the question was, how would I change the transition in these images? Can I use a different transition? Well, I could click on the transition button itself here, and I could set them to specific transitions. So if I wanted to do a fade and then I don't know, if I wanted to do a stretch on the next one, I could do that. So I could set these as I go. Then I have the transition duration, so the actual time that it takes to transition, and then the slide duration. Transition duration of 2 seconds is pretty long, so maybe I would just make it 1 and apply them to all. And then the slide, let's say I wanted to stick with that 9 seconds and I'd apply it to all. So then that would apply to each and every section here. And then what I can do is I can add a caption right here using the slideshow tools. The other thing I can do is I can insert my metadata tag. So I could do this, I could go in and I could say, well, I have a caption that I'd like to use, and I'd like to apply it to all of them. And so this enables me to insert the corresponding metadata that I showed earlier. When I click OK, it will fill out that field. And then it also gives me the ability to add audio, much like in the previous menu. This can also be applied to all, which means that it would play over all of the images. When I go to next, it gives me the ability to just apply a background audio like we talked about, but this would be non-image specific. And then text also enables me a secondary menu where I got to add this caption information. However, this caption information, the font size, etc., can actually be edited in a way that this caption can't. So if you're going to add a caption to your images, maybe the method to do so is to do that with the final mode here. Oops. Text section here, and use the tools like we did in the previous section to display a footer file or insert that metadata, going to ACDSee metadata, selecting captions. Maybe the background color is black, and then the font color in this case is going to be white, and we'll increase the font size to say 26, and we'll bold it. And rather than black letter, we'll choose a different one. Let's see here. Let's just choose, there it is. We'll choose I wish that was a bit faster, Montserrat or something like that. Click OK. And then with that complete, then I can go to the next step. And that is, this would be the creation, the space where this is created in this folder here. So in this case, let's put this file in, let's put it in the pictures folder, and let's put it in this Portugal folder here, and I'll save it there. We'll name it slideshow as is, and we'll save the project file under, we'll leave that where it is right here. Go to next, and then it's going to save this slideshow, and this should be visible to me upon completion. So I can launch the slideshow. Oops, that's not showing on this. Well, here, I'll do it on the other. See if I can display it on this section. It's displaying on my other monitor here. Let's see if I can display it here. Can I move this slideshow? I can't. Okay. Well, it's playing on the other monitor. So, but yes, that slideshow is created, and then it's it can be something that I can visualize here. The point being is that I can go through that slideshow process, the creation of the slideshow process, to facilitate all of those steps along the way. Okay, we had some questions. Does the slideshow adjust automatically the duration to the duration of the audio file? Yeah, X shortens the duration of the slide or the transition. No, I don't believe so. The slide transition would be the master functionality. The audio would play up to the duration. If it was image specific, if you applied the audio over top of the whole slideshow, then it'll just play till the end of the song and it would likely repeat or loop provided that you've selected that. Tom, are the photos in a slideshow displayed by the sort order you selected, such as the date taken or file name? It is displayed to you in the method that you have selected them. So when I go to create a slideshow file, you can see that they're listed here. Now I can move these wherever I want. So, or I can add more images to this predicated on a different folder on my file or a different location on my drive. So, if I don't like the order that they're presented in this linear context here, then what I could do is I could move them with my by just sliding and dragging these images. Good question. Mike asked, "Is there an option for effects or variations in a slideshow file?" Pardon my voice here. Excuse me. Yes. So we talked about this. So effects or variation in slideshow. Each image that you have here has the ability for a different transition style. The effect itself here, let's see if there's an opportunity to add that. I don't think there can be an effect added per file. Let's see here. Advanced, miscellaneous, text, loop, play. No, it doesn't appear as though their effect option, like in this case, the filter that applies over top of the image, is something that we can add per slide. So this would be without that effect, the corresponding effect. We do have the ability to add the transitions per image, but not like, say, a sepia tone. And then pan and zoom. Oh, per image, yeah. No, that would not be something that you could add per image. Yeah, you can't like enable the you could let's see here. You could do a transition that was, let's see, is there a zoom transition? There is not. Let's see here. Play once, slide order, forward, backward. No, there isn't a functionality for like effects during the slideshow. That looks like it was something that was could do in the previous slideshow, like so sort of instantaneous slideshow, in the sense that you had the ability to add effects, but no pan and zoom in this case. The actual file, let's see. I wish I could play this on this screen. Let me maybe move my screen share. Let's see here. Let's see if I can move my screen share. There we go. And then I want to screen share on number 2. This is actually very difficult to do. Yeah, this is I can't display the second screen without losing my controls here. I'm just going to state that it is that the configure slideshow options, like the variations and effects, are not something that we can add to the actual creation of an exe file. That's something that you can display in this sort of instantaneous slideshow option, but not the other. Good question. Sorry that I couldn't display that. Nancy asks, can you add a video clip into the slideshow? That's a good question, if it'll allow us. Let's just try that really quickly. Let's go to Pexels and let's just download a very short video just so we can display this. Something free that I can use. This will take a moment to download. And then we'll try adding a video file to the slideshow to see. I'm doubtful it'll work, but we can give it a go. Let's see. So there's our video file. If we click these images and our video file and go to create slideshow file, let's see, it does not recognize that video file. So this is image specific, no video can be added. It is not listed here. If I just click on this and go slideshow file, yeah, there's no items to display. So it won't recognize a video file. Can you create slideshows on Mac? I'm sorry, this workshop pertains to PC. I'm the PC guy at ACDSee, so I don't do Mac specific workshops. That would be something to touch base with Rodrigo on or a developer to talk about. Okay. So this is the second method to create an exe slideshow. Yes. So the first method was just displaying the slideshow that you've created using ACDSee to display it. The second one is creating an exe file that this exe file can then be sent to others because, as you can see here, that file is something that I can give or email, that sort of thing. The third method is going to be the method that we're going to use that caption data to create text on our image directly in the event that someone can't open the exe file. There is no limit on the number of slides, it looks like. Although, that being said, let's just double check really quickly to see if it states anything. I'm doubtful that there's a limit. I don't think there's a limit. I think you could add so many photos to this, like probably several thousand photos to this before it's going to ever have trouble. Let's just quickly have a look in the help contents here to see if they say anything about slideshows. I'm doubtful again that there's anything here that says the maximum number of slideshow. Maximum. Yeah, it doesn't list it. Okay, so there's nothing in the help contents that states how many can be made. So my assumption would be keep going, go nuts, fill your boots. I hit a maximum. It tells me what, Mike. What is the maximum? What was your experience? Just out of curiosity, was it like 100 images? Because in that case, what it looks like is it probably would just ask you to create multiple slideshows rather than to, yeah, more like great 1,000. Okay, so in this case, I mean that's a ton of images for a slideshow. What I would do is I would just simply create multiple slideshows and break them into, if you're having to display 2,000 slides, for example, I would just go slideshow 1 and slideshow 2. And then because, in the case that you are on a very long vacation and take thousands of photos, that actually might be a value to you to have a really, really long slideshow in that way. Also, the saving of that will take a while because there's thousands of photos in the slideshow. But yeah, I would just simply break it into two. Okay, let's talk about the second method. And this is one that I really want to put emphasis on because it's going to be a bit more complicated. Okay, so so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up one of these images into edit mode. And just to be clear of what I'm doing here, this is a method that's just going to add a image caption per image so that I can display a photo using something that isn't Windows. So the purpose of this is just to add a caption to an image. And then what we can do is you can decide how you want to have those images, displayed, whether it be in a folder or something like that. And then you take that folder and you put it onto a USB drive that you then utilize elsewhere. All I'm trying to show you here is that you already will have the images for the slideshow. I'm just going to showcase how to add text onto them because, as you saw with the slideshow function, adding the caption was a function of the slideshow. Now what I'm going to do is show you how to add text to your images in such a way that that you can always display them with that text already on the image. So this is a slightly different function and isn't necessarily a true slideshow, but we're creating a caption on our image. With that understood, let's show you how to do it. So I'm going to take this first image and I'm going to open it up in edit mode. When I do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin a recording process. So I haven't talked about this in a while, but ACDSee has something called ACDSee Actions. And Actions enables me to save a series of adjustments that I've made to an image, and then I can play those actions once the action is saved on other images. So this could be some things like adjustments that change the sort of lighting conditions and color conditions of my image, or it could be something like adding text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click record a new action. It is right up at the top here, right here. With record an action live, you'll see that a box will appear that lists the recording process. This is very important. I want to make sure that you're watching this recording process and seeing what is listed as we go. So currently it just says we're recording. We haven't actually done anything to this image yet. The next thing what we're going to do is we're going to add text to our image. And I'm going to do that by clicking on the text tool and clicking anywhere on my image. And as you can see here, the text is added to the center and it's highlighted. But importantly, it also lists the text here in that it says add text layer. So this first process is copied, or rather, it's recorded right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete any text that exists, and we're going to do something that typically in any photo, right? I could just add text. So this one was in Lisbon, I don't know, 2024, say, right? I could do that. But the problem with what I'm doing here is that if I was to create an action with this content, this exact verbiage, Lisbon 2024, would be copied on all the corresponding imagery. Okay. So, what I want to do is not inform my text based on the text that I add, but rather inform it on what I'm inserting based on the metadata of the image. So, this is very important. I need to click Insert Metadata. And just like we did with the slideshow, I'm going to navigate to ACDSee metadata and caption. This was the metadata that I added to these images, and this is the metadata that I'm going to add here. So I'm going to click ACDSee metadata and click caption. And as you can see, this is then populated with that content. Okay. So I have my Lisbon here. It's Lisbon 1. It's the first image in my listing. And then let's change both the font on this as well as the font color just to make it a bit more visually visible. So I'm going to go to my font choice here. Let's choose Oswald. That's just a very neutral font. I'm going to keep the text white. I'm going to add a layer effect. And the layer effect is going to be maybe an outline. Let's see here. Let's add an outline of black to my text. We'll lower the blur, and we're going to dramatically lower the thickness of the text there. So we have Lisbon 1 in a very legible font, okay? So we have Lisbon in a easily readable font with a nice outline. How I got to the outline was by clicking on the FX layer effects here, and then I just simply add the outline by checking it and changing its corresponding settings. So I've done that. You can see that that is now listed. So I have added a text, I've edited the text layer, I've enabled an outline, and I've changed the effects of that outline. So all of these has changed so far. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to move this text. And I'm going to move this text not by moving it with the move tool, but rather I'm going to move it, or sorry, not by moving it with the text tool, but I'm going to move it with the move tool. So I'm going to navigate to the move tool here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to center this, and I'm going to put it at the bottom of my image. So I navigated from the text tool to the move tool, and what I'm doing is centering the text and bottoming the text in the center. And then when I do that, I'm going to click commit. And then as you can see, that is then listed in the recording of this action. So all I've done so far is add the text with the text tool, change the text tool to the insert of the particular metadata that I wanted. Then I just change the layer effects to make it more visible. You decide what you want to do. It might just be as simple as changing the color of the text for you, but I've changed it by adding a little outline. And then importantly, I've moved it to the bottom of my image, the bottom center of my image. My recording is complete. That's all I wanted to do. I'm going to click stop recording, and this is an integral step. I'm going to stop the recording. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that I have to save this. So I'm going to save this action under watermark. And what I'm going to call this is slideshow text. Okay. And then I'm going to save it there. And I'm going to watermark's fine because it is essentially a watermark that I'm adding. And I'm going to click save. And now I actually don't need to save this particular file because I've got what I want out of it. But if I go back to manage mode and I just discard the changes, I can add this action to all my images. So for B Deal, who asked this question, how do I add this caption to my images so I can display these different images on my computer? I can click all these images now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the actions browser specifically. I'm going to click on actions up here, and I'm going to navigate back to where I saved that particular action. And I know that I saved it under watermark here. And if I go to slideshow text, I can play this action on all of these images. So if I click play, it's going to apply this and it's going to save these images in the same folder that I have been working with. So let's have a peek. Looks like it's been added here. So I will just let's actually just view them this way. So I have Lisbon 1 here. Where is it? And then Lisbon 2, Lisbon 3, Lisbon 4, etc. So whatever metadata that you wanted to copy, whatever field, caption, title, notes, whatever keywords is listed down at the bottom here, adding that font in such a way that's very easy for me to see. So here's all of that font displayed. And importantly, it's displayed in the exact same location, regardless of the orientation of my image. It is at the bottom center of my image, regardless of its orientation. So now the simple aspect of this is, well, your slideshow is complete in the sense that you have the caption added. So I would just take these corresponding images and put them onto the USB drive of my choice and display them in that way, using whatever tool, the TV, that sort of thing. Just to note that I have no way of controlling the transition type with these images. That is a limitation of this method. The limitation being, in this case, these images that I've created contain the proper captioning that I wanted, and I can put them in the order that I want. But I will never be able to display them with a transition type and a fade and that sort of thing. That is a limitation of it. So B asked, now how do you copy to USB? You select the photos, and yeah, well, basically what I could do is I could use the folder window itself to navigate to the USB that I wanted to work with. For example, I believe I have two hard drives on my folder. I could put these images directly into the folder themselves. The other thing I could do is I could, let's see here. Uh, can I? No, this would be importing. Yeah. So what I could do is I could, let's see here. I could also use the export tool to place them to the location if I wanted, if I was uncomfortable copying and pasting. Let's see if there's something under file as well. Send, no, edit. I think what I would do here, if I was taking these, I would just take these and I would navigate to the corresponding folder. So let's say the USB in question is design here. I would navigate to this folder here. I would create a new, folder in this folder that just saying slideshow files, and I'd place them there. That's how I would do that. But I would just use the folder window itself to engage with that content. Where was I here? I was in a folder called Portugal that I just created. Where did it go? I'm blind. Gosh, this is really frustrating. I just created this. Where did it go? Anyway, here we are. Where did I put it? Oh, it's in there. I just couldn't see it. Okay. Well, that's fine. But point being is that you can copy and paste it or export them to the corresponding USB drive that you wanted. So you have the text. You can then do with it what you want. So. Okay, Chuck asked, I hadn't noticed that you're working with JPEG files. Would it be possible to use RAW files in a slideshow? This is a good question. So, to what end would you want to use a RAW file, Chuck? Just out of curiosity. The reason why I ask is because if quality is the question, um, I think ACDSee, like raw files are not directly editable, right? So they are they're proprietary files and they're not you can't interact with them. You can edit them in ACDSee as a through a sidecar file. It would, I think if you were to engage with a raw file in ACDC and want to create a slideshow file, it would force you to do that in the sense that it would have to go through the process of creating a, let's actually see. Because I don't think a raw file on its own would be, where did I put those raw files that I had here? They're in one of these folders. Oh, finding them is going to be a challenge here, but I think that my answer to this is it's gonna force you to convert them to a lossy file type. Here we are, HDR. Yeah, so here's some HDR images. Let's go into the second folder here. There's a bunch of raw files in here. Let's create slideshow file. Okay, what does it do to these images? Okay, same. Let's go through the process and let's put it in this folder now. This is the HDR folder. Let's go into pictures. 100%, I think what it's going to do is it's going to basically have to convert these files in some way. So there's an HDR folder here. Where are you? HDR. I'll save it on the top section here. Click next. Oh, project 2. Next. There we go. So the and this is even more important for, there we go, finish. So see what happens here. Let me see if it even makes it here. Yeah, I think my understanding is correct here. This is under HDR slideshow. Oh, I see. It's in the above folder here. Okay, yeah, so it's there. My guess is, yeah, I could play this, but my guess is that this is the case. Yeah. Okay. Um, Thank you, Joe. um, so, so basically, my point being, Chuck, is that so raw files are not directly editable by ACDC. We have to use this. We have to use a sidecar file in order to present to you like the adjustments that you've made to an image. And so my point being is that if you're creating a slideshow file with these images, I don't think exe can be created with those same raw files. So a conversion probably must occur in order for you to save a slideshow. Now, I just did that with those raw images, and it doesn't look like it had any effect to the raw files whatsoever. But my guess would be that a conversion would have to occur in order for you to create that new file that contains the reference to those raw files. So I'm guessing that a conversion occurs and it creates them into JPEGs or TIFF files or something like that in order for it to process them correctly. Now, I don't actually have a way of determining if that's true. This is just a hunch I have based on the way that ACDC interacts with raw files in general. So I'm sorry if I don't have a more direct answer to your question, but yeah, that that's that on that. What about ACDC files? Yeah, Mike, shouldn't be a problem. You could totally do that. Here, I could even present this to you. Let's see if I have a ACDC file. Yeah, I have two ACDC files right here, actually. So if I go to these ones, slideshow file, boom. Yeah, there you go. You can present ACDC files, no problem. What keys save the selection of photos? What keys do? I'm not sure with this question. Sorry. Do you have to select an option to show the recording? Uh, Yes. So when we're engaging with, let's go back to that folder that I don't know where it went. That's so hilarious. Oh, there it is. It's at the top. Okay. So if I take all of these images, say, and I'm running an action, it does, Sharon, it does ask me to display or to choose which action that I'm applying. So a base value, if I know exactly where my action is, I can go to the action itself. In this case, I listed under watermark slideshow text, but I can always go to the actions browser to choose this same function as well. So there is a method by which this is displayed to me here using the actions browser, but the recording itself is not shown What may be shown is the steps involved with let's see here, the slideshow. So if I go to the Actions browser and I click on this little icon right here, it displays the steps that I saved in the recording process. So if you remember the recording process, it says add text layer, edit text layer, enable outline, outline effect change, and move. And that was the corresponding changes that I made. Oh, you couldn't get the window to appear. So presumably in edit mode. So in edit mode, it's this little section right here, up at the top. Let's see here. I think it's associated with the tools. So it'd be under the toolbar here. But let's see if I can bring it up. Filter uh, in another way. There's a section of actions. Actions browser also works. So the Actions browser will bring this up. I think it's listed under the toolbar specifically, though. So if you go to View Toolbars, ACDSee Actions is listed third from the top. So if I unclick that, you can see that it disappears. Typically speaking, people tend to remove the filters because they're already listed on the left here. And sometimes people don't know that ACDSee Actions can be popped up here. So it's listed right there. So if you wanted to make that recording window appear, I would make sure that the toolbar is first visible. And then secondly, I would click the record a new actions button to ensure that you start the recording process. ACDSee Actions has existed in ACDSee for like so many versions of the product. Oh, is it? Do you have a second window, Sharon, or perhaps is it tucked underneath your current window? Like I have two screens on my computer, and oftentimes it pops up underneath a window on my second screen. So I just confirm that it's not in a on your second screen if you have one, or underneath something. Past that, it might be a bug. That would be something to explore with a representative of the company with the support team, but it should typically just be on a second screen or out of the way. Whenever I click on it, historically it always opens up on my second screen, so I have to pull it over. I'm not sure if that helps, but okay. Let's see here if there's any other questions. Steve asked, "Do you know if ACDC might be considering replacing SWF with MB4?" It's a great question, Steve. If I may, I would actually recommend touching base on the community hub and just asking it for feature requests and developer Q&A. To me, yeah, that should be something that they do. I think it's quite an antiquated, like antiquated mode, and I think opening just an MP4 file would be awesome, right? If you could just save a quick MP4 file using the slideshow tools, that'd be so handy. And in many ways, that would enable many users to take the slideshow and then put it onto the USB like B deal is describing and maintain those transitions. But no, I don't know if they have any consideration of replacing SWF. Although I think it hasn't been a file format for a very long time, so it would make sense to get rid of it. It hasn't been a file since for like almost 10 years. So yeah, that's something that would be definitely worth their time to do. Great question. Yeah, Norman, agree. Honestly, I would just recommend that directly, or Norman sound off on if the other. Sorry, what's your name again? My apologies. If Steve goes ahead and asks that to the Q&A, I would just respond and sound off in that because when people ask for the same functionality, they take that seriously. Especially for something that's, I think, quite an easy change for the developers to make. If you're ever curious how to ask developers for software adjustments, the more people that ask, the better. But the other thing is existing user interface. So if something works really easy and is easy to change with an existing user interface, developers like that because they're like, oh, I can just add that here, no problem. But it's when you ask them to change the user interface that tools become very much more involved and require more years of development time. If you're curious about the back end there. Okay, that covers everything I wanted to talk about today. If there's any other questions I missed, I think, yeah, I did answer that question of B deals. If we want what would we look under in the help manual? I understand these two methods better. Is all explained under slideshow or not written as well as in your explanation? Um, well, first and foremost, I I can definitely save this workshop to YouTube. I tend to upload them, but just for the benefit of you, because I probably bet you don't want to rewatch the whole thing. I might just do a quick tutorial on how to do the second thing, which is the actions section. I think the slideshow tool itself, creating the EXE, is fairly straightforward. But if I was to create a tutorial on those things, just like a short under 5 minute tutorial, in addition to this workshop being uploaded, would that help you in regards to creating slideshows? Yeah. Okay. So Norman's saying yes to that. I can certainly do that. I'm always looking for content for tutorials. But yeah, I think creating a slideshow would be one, and then adding captions using ACDSee actions that then you could use in a slideshow would be two. So why don't I write those down just so we can add those in a faster video, one that maybe is more referenceable than a workshop. Obviously the benefit of tutorials is I can get a really succinct scripted answer to these questions, whereas workshops are more involved and obviously much more interactive. So okay, let's do that. One tutorial, so slideshow tutorial, and one let's say actions metadata tutorial. You got it. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Deal. Okay, guys, that's it for today. If if you have any other questions, just reach out to me on Connect. How you do that is on the Connect page. I will be listed under free workshops, in particular past workshops. So if you're to click on this one in particular, you will have the ability to contact me here. So if you hover over my name, you can view my profile and chat with me there. That's how you reach out to me. If you have any other questions, just let me know in regards to that. But that is it for slideshows today, folks. Not super complicated, but there is elements of it that probably do describe or needed a little sort of explanation. I think that the understanding that you can add captions and how and where captions are added in metadata fields is a huge benefit to this tool and will help a lot of people. So just being able to add a little bit of text to your images, regardless of whether or not it's an exe file or just the photos in general. So thank you, everybody. That's it for today. I'm going to mute my mic, and I will probably close this workshop in a couple minutes if I don't get any emergent questions. So thank you so much, and I will see you next time for the next workshop that I do, which will be in July. So, okay. Thanks, Michelle. Also agree with that too. All right. Take care.